Welcome to the F&O Insurtech podcast, a place where movers and shakers from all points within the insurance ecosystem gather and discuss all things Insurtech. We talk about how technology and innovation are affecting and driving change in the industry. Here are your hosts, Lee Boyd and Rob Beller.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today on the F&O Insurtech podcast. I am your host, Lee Boyd. Your other host, Rob Beller, is unable to be on today, but he's very sad about that, and he sends his wishes to everybody. He didn't actually tell me that, but I'm going to tell you that he said that. That way everyone feels good about him not being here. But as always, we miss Rob. He'll be back on the next one, I hope. This podcast today is a really neat one that I think everyone's going to enjoy. We have Michael Nadel, who's a senior director at Simon Kucher and Partners, a consulting firm where he works on the insurance vertical, and he helps carriers of all sizes navigate this world of insurance, but Insurtech, pricing, underwriting, AI, climate change, you name it, he deals with it. On the podcast today, we're going to get to talk about those subjects. We're going to get to know a little bit about who he is. But like I said, we're going to get to talk about how insurers are dealing with climate change, how insurers are changing around, making sure that they're making money. And then we end with a really good segment on sales and what does AI look like, and chat GPT, or things like that in the sales in the sales world. So it'll be a great conversation. I think everyone's going to enjoy it. So without further ado, here is our interview with Michael Nadel, Senior Director at Simon Kucher and Partners. Well, hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have another exciting episode. Today, we have Michael Nadel, who's a Senior Director at Simon Kucher. Welcome, Michael.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Did I say all that right? Did I pronounce it correctly?
Yeah, it sounded good.
Good. It's almost like I practiced beforehand, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Michael, we're excited to have you on. Where do we have you today? Where are you calling us from?
Calling in from the northern suburbs of the Chicago area. I'm up in the Deerfield area, if you're familiar with Chicagoland.
Yeah, is that home?
It's home now. It's been home for probably about the last decade or so. Originally raised in the Midwest and the Cincinnati area, and then have been in Chicago for quite some time now.
Okay, what got you moving up there?
I came here right out of school. I started my career in consulting and knew I was going to be on the road. Ended up moving from Indiana to Chicago and have been here ever since.
Well, that's a good thing. You went, let's see, you went up to school up there, you said, right?
I went to Indiana for undergrad and for my first master's degree. And I went out of school. I was working at Accenture for a little while in their financial services consulting practice. I moved up here to Chicago because I knew the most people here. It was an easy place to be when you were on the road 4 days a week, every week.
Yeah.
And met my now wife, and her whole family is from here. So got a strong sneaking suspicion that I'm going to be here for a long time, but I love it. It's a great city.
Well, good. It's nice. It's good weather up there.
I don't know if many people say that, but it's got
right now. Today it's good, right? Isn't today
right.
Nice?
Today it's pretty good. Yeah,
that's good. It's a 112 where I live today.
Oh yeah, I think we're getting some of that later this week.
Well, you're welcome. You can have ours.
There you go.
Well, Michael, why don't we talk a little bit about the company you work for? So
Sure.
You are a insurance guy. You've been in the insurance world. And now you're working with Simon Kucher and Partners. What is Simon Kucher?
Yeah, we are a strategy consultancy focused on enabling growth for our clients. we do this across a number of different industries, with financial services and specifically insurance being one of them. At the core of kind of what that means is we help clients focus on all things growth related, no things really kind of cost optimization. So if you think about that, it's really how do you price your products better? How do you compose them into offerings that are really kind of well understood and easier to be purchased? How do you enable your sales teams to be more effective? Do you have optimal go to market strategies defined? And we deploy these things across a number of different industries with people that are kind of specialized like myself, across a number of different topics. And yeah, I focus in on the insurance side of the world on those topics.
What type of clientele are we talking to here? Is it major carriers? Is it smaller regional?
Yeah, so it's really the entire kind of insurance ecosystem. So we focus on the carrier space as well as all of the people in the insurance ecosystem that sell into that carrier market. Typically, in the carrier side, it's kind of your mid to large players. But then we also work with the TPAs, third party analytic providers, and the insurtechs of the world, and helping them to figure out the best ways to sell their products more effectively into their primary buyers.
That one's interesting. Working with insurtechs to sell their products.
Yep.
Can you talk about that a little bit? Because we talk to insurtechs all day long. It's an
Yep.
insurtech podcast, and normally it's people who came up with an idea and said we could disrupt or we could enhance insurance, but sometimes they don't know really how to sell what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, there's kind of two primary levers I would say in the way that we help insurtechs. One is, ensuring that the product kind of fits the core intent. So I think you hit the nail on the head of the way that most insurtechs kind of think about starting a business. They probably came from the insurance space or they were involved in the insurance space and they came up with an idea after having probably a poor kind of experience in one way or looking for a way to optimize that. With the way that we do work, we have a team of subject matter experts that have kind of seen the insurance industry, worked across a number of different spaces, and can bring perspective on whether a product has been developed in a way that's really going to meet kind of the biggest product market fit. And we also take kind of a unique approach into the way that we think about validating whether or not ideas are good. And it's, a revolutionary idea, which is speak to your customers. And so we actually go out and do a lot of this research and speaking directly to the end consumers and talking about what the product is that's being offered and understanding really what do they value that's within there, right? And extracting kind of that value statement and making sure that the product is fit for the market, and that when they think about developing a product roadmap, it meets the needs that they haven't yet captured in the product. The other area I'd say that we really help insurtechs in is one of the core competencies of the firm, which is pricing and packaging. So our firm was built on this concept around effective pricing and packaging of products. And that's really where our firm gained notoriety. And so we're able to deploy that for the insurtech and help them think about, are you pricing not only at what you're charging for your products, but how you're charging for it? Do you charge based off of DWP? Is it transaction based? And what are the levels at which you should be selling this product for? And so we're able to deploy kind of our proven concepts around pricing into the insurtech space and help them make the product fit their needs and price it accordingly to be able to adopt more sales overall.
That's neat. I assume there's a lot of secret sauce in that, but I'm thinking about the insurance space. The insurance space is a lot of times traditional. We're thoughtful in the moves, right? It's been around for years and years, hundreds of years, and it's working. And so whenever you're selling a insurtech product to a traditional carrier, I assume it's more than just the price. You have to add that value prop. Is
Without a
that something
doubt.
you do as well?
Yeah, without a doubt. And I've been on the other side of that, having been a part of an innovation function within a large carrier where it was partly our job to understand how we could do things better and what sorts of technologies would better enable that. And so I think I've got a pretty unique perspective when I go to help our clients. It's not just, is the product right? Is it priced correctly? But what are the value articulation points that are necessary to kind of get carriers interested in the conversation? And what are the tactics and techniques to be able to kind of flow through the insurance carrier's typical decision-making process to better set yourself up for a sale? Because I think you're exactly right. It's, price is typically a factor. And I think that people very often lean on this and think that it's the only and the key factor. But in reality, in insurance, price is important, but ultimately you got to have quality. And it really doesn't matter what you're selling, whether it's for underwriting, claim management, fraud detection. You could sell anything for cheap, but if it doesn't have the right quality, the carriers aren't going to purchase it.
Right. So Insurtech and innovation are some words that have been around for a while. Over the past 5 years since we've been doing this podcast, I think I've used the word innovation on every single podcast. Are the big carriers, are they still focusing on innovation? Have they kind of moved over the hill and said, okay, we saw what was out there. Now it's back to our core, or are these companies still striving to be the most innovative companies that they can be?
Yeah, I think I've gotten to see and work with a lot of large carriers, both being in a large carrier as my full-time job, as well as from a consulting perspective. And I think the answer really is different depending on each carrier and the segments that they serve. I mean, I think if you speak in broad generalities, the personal lines insurance space is just inherently more innovative. And it's partly because they have to be, because they're more direct to the consumer and the consumer's overall end experience. Even within that space, I think there's varying degrees of who's really being innovative in the ways that you approach innovation. And I think every carrier will have a group called innovation, and they're treated very differently. I think there are some carriers that really live and breathe innovation. And to me, what that really means is we're going to try things out. More than 50, 60, 70% of the things we're going to try likely won't lead anywhere. And that's fine. We're going to test it with customers. We're going to see what they think, and we're going to adapt our strategy based off of that. And it's really living and breathing that kind of fail fast mentality to driving innovation. I think then there's the other side of the coin, which is the commercial lines carriers, which are innovative and they're doing things, but naturally the way that they do business is just so different than it is in the direct to consumer kind of personal line space. And so innovation does exist. People are testing things in the commercial line space, but it moves more slowly, and it moves kind of bottoms up in the market. So you see a lot of similar innovation to the personal line space in the small business markets in particular, where it acts in the commercial space, but more similarly to personal lines.
I see. Well, so as a consultant, you probably get asked a lot of questions. You get to see a lot of what's going on, and you probably read a lot. And I want to ask, what are some trends out there that people are asking you about or focusing on? What are some hot topics out there that, that's in the insurance world?
We're talking to a lot of customers right now about better enabling sales. So if you think about the model, both whether it's inside sales or outside sales, so internal sales reps or the agent relationship kind of model, it feels like the agent model is going through a lot of changes. I think historically the model of an agent had been, hey, come be very entrepreneurial, start your own business, you build your book of business. And then once it gets into this kind of renewal cycle, you're able to just kind of sit pretty and have a nice business that creates a nice, revenue stream for you and creates a nice lifestyle.
Right.
I think where I see the industry starting to go is a bit of a shakeup there, where there's a lot of pressure on that traditional model to start to create new business. The agent model is expensive and people are going more digital. And so you have to prove more value, I think, as an agent today to not just to your customers, but also to the carrier that you support if you're a captive agent, for instance. And so we're talking to a lot of carriers about what those models could look like, how they can create the most benefit for their customers, and ultimately how to enable both the inside sales reps as well as these agents to be more successful with the plethora of data that exists at the carrier fingertip.
Let's dive in a little bit on that. 8 years ago, we heard the agent is dying.
Yeah.
We're doing away with the agent. You can just buy this online. We don't need the agent. And over the years, we saw that fear turn into you got to have an agent. Even the Insurtechs are like, yeah, we sell the majority of our policies through agents. We love the agents. We
Yeah.
have another way to buy, but the agent is integral. The agent's important. But what you're saying is that it's not maybe not the death of the agent, but it's a different type of agent. Instead of your traditional, here's my agency, maybe it's more inside agents.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I think it's creating a nice mix. Being an agent owner is in and of itself a big financial investment and a commitment. And I think, unfortunately for the insurance industry, if you think about, I've got two young kids and think about what's popular these days. I think being an insurance agent, unless your parents were that or someone in your family is that,
Right.
isn't necessarily the first thing that comes to their mind.
It is not.
They want to be TikTok stars and influencers and all of these things. And so I think it's pushing people towards what used to be a kind of stable career into maybe something, let's dip our toes in it. And for an insurance carrier, that can be more kind of inside sales types of models before pushing to the rep. But I think the point that you were making about, the death of the agent, I don't agree with that at all. And I think there's just so many reasons for that. People don't love insurance. No one wants, to even think about their insurance most of the time, except for insurance people, until they need it. And then when they need it, it's all about how was the experience? Did they handle my claim effectively? Did they manage this? And that's the human aspect of the insurance world, especially in personal line space, that isn't ever going to change. Like you want to be able to call and talk to a human, to be able to get advice on what's going on with your claim, or to be able to be explained to, what is it that exactly that you're purchasing. And I think when you take that into the commercial line space, it only becomes more important when everything is more customized, bigger deals, more important. And, if you're running a business, you don't want to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis the insurance carrier. Let your agent or your broker handle that for you and just shorten that cycle for you.
Yeah, especially on the commercial side. I mean, an agent is so important because it's so complicated. On the homeowner side or on the auto side, maybe not as complicated, but yet you want to be able to ask a question and get a response back, which leads me to online instances of like Chat GPT or AI conversations. Is there a way that using engines like ChatGPT or Bard from Google, is there a way if you implemented something like that into your online sales, that maybe you do start giving people more of a almost human touch? What is your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt. And I think that's when you think about, the question I get asked a lot, and you ask, what I'm hearing a lot about. If you go to any conference right now, you could, play a fun game around how many times was the term Gen AI or AI used. It is the biggest topic of conversation at the moment. And I think the most obvious use cases for it are, at least from a customer facing standpoint, are those kind of immediate touch points at the point of quoting and creating customized policies and creating a customized kind of customer experience. And there have been a lot of attempts at this kind of over the years with chatbots and different things to, very varying degrees of success. And I think Gen AI is going to take that actually to kind of the first useful level where, in some scary ways, you're going to not really know if you're online or even on the
Right.
phone speaking to a human or not, right?
Isn't that weird?
It's slightly terrifying, but I think from an insurance perspective, it's a good thing, right? I mean, it goes back to what we were saying a few minutes ago, where you want to have the feeling of dealing with a human, but what that really means is I want someone who can explain this complicated insurance stuff to me in a very simple way. And that's what the chatbot was invented to do. It just didn't do a very good job of it in most cases whenever it ran into something even, just outside of its realm of what it's able to answer. And Gen AI changes that by being able to be more adaptive and more thoughtful in the way that it thinks about things and being able to operate outside of this little box that it was programmed to answer.
Do you see artificial intelligence changing any other parts of insurance other than just the sales or question side?
Yeah, I think it's going to be used in a number of different ways. I mean, I think if you think about like from an underwriting perspective, being able to better identify the appetite that an insurance carrier is interested in. If you think about, and I was already seeing this, when I was in the carrier spaces, how do you unlock the data that you have available to you and better analyze what's out there to make decisions? And you think about the legacy way of making decisions, it was all about, okay, well, let's run this pre-canned report, the TL 167 state report and see what it says about my premium by state. When in reality, the ability to just freeform ask questions about data is just so much faster, so much more insightful. And there's a bunch of technologies that are being deployed, on this kind of conversational way to be able to get at your data and make more kind of informative insights. And then on the other side, you've got the whole claims experience, right? And how can you use AI to better create better workflows, create more straight through processing of simple types of claims? And I think that Gen AI is really just taking what's already been started with more traditional forms of AI and just kind of supercharging some of that.
Is it your opinion that AI could help some of these insurance companies who are maybe struggling with their ratios to actually start making some money? Do you think AI could help them do that?
Well, I think it can help. I think the question becomes, do you listen to it? And
Mm,
I think there's two camps of people out there right now, which is AI is going to take my job, and there's the other camp, which is it can never replace me. And I think the true answer is it's going to be somewhere in the middle, and the people that are able to kind of lean into that viewpoint are going to be the most successful. And I think what I mean by that is AI gives great insights. It can also give very, very bad insights.
right.
And your ability to like learn and understand these models and how to best kind of feed it data, the right data to make it smarter, analyze what it's saying and make thoughtful decisions. Absolutely. You can start to write much better business. But if, you're of the camp where you think that you're the smartest person on the earth, well, if you choose to neglect some of these insights, you'll probably continue to write poor business.
Let's talk a little bit about underwriting. You said that's one of the core principles that you work on. We've seen a lot of insurance companies stop writing or say they're going to stop writing in large areas,
Yeah.
California, Florida. I guess at your firm, at the agency there, is that something you're working with people on? Maybe not those specifics, but with people about how to underwrite better or how not to just kind of paint with a broad brush that we can't insure this area, but maybe we could use technology to help us do individual houses, something like that. Is that something you work on?
Yeah, it is definitely something that we talk to customers about. And I think this has been something in the insurance industry that's been talked about for a long time. Could you use just a zip code to underwrite? And for a while that was probably okay. And now it's like, could I write based off of a certain street? And now it's, I need to know everything about that individual kind of house. I think generally in the insurance industry, we're seeing risks just getting exacerbated. So look at what's going on with the wildfires. Every season of weather seems to be worse from a cat perspective.
Right.
And you think about that from these coastal areas, Florida, California, and the risks are just becoming very, very tough to insure. And I think at the end of the day, insurance is a fundamental necessity and something that everybody deserves the right to have. Now, with that being said, just because you deserve it doesn't mean that it's going to be cheap or easy to get. And I think when you live in these areas in Florida, California, and you're an insurer trying to write in those spaces, it's only going to continue to get more and more difficult. And there's just all these technologies, that we are talking about that are starting to make it better and easier to do the underwriting. And these coastal carriers and these very kind of concentrated risk type of carriers are just going to have to continue to really innovate to the point that we were speaking on earlier in order to successfully write this type of insurance, or else, and I don't necessarily fully advocate for this, it's going to become governmental driven, because insurance carriers just aren't going to want to take on the risks in certain areas.
Yeah, I was having a conversation with my brother-in-law the other day, and we were talking about how so many people are having a hard time finding affordable insurance.
Yeah.
And there's a couple ways to think about it. I mean, you could take less coverage, right? Or you could say, I want to be insured, but I don't want to be insured for my roof, right?
Yeah.
You could start kind of piecemealing it. That's an option. But people, especially people with a mortgage, you have to have this insurance, but the price is just getting astronomical in certain areas. I mean, I don't really know the fix. Something I've seen is that the E&S market has really had an uptick.
Yeah.
People writing unique policies, different policies. I mean, is that the way of the future? Do we see more of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think going back to the topic of Gen AI, like if you ask the average individual to say, okay, what is your house insurance? They're going to say, I've got State Farm or I've got Nationwide. And you say, no. Like what coverages do you have? What are your limits? What is your roof coverage? What is your hail deductible?
Right.
And they're going to be like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So when you talk about writing an insurance product where, yeah, your house is insured, but your roof isn't, the average individual is not going to understand that at all, because they look at the insurance product as an absolute requirement and not something that they're really invested in that process. So I think when you think about like Chat GPT and these kind of Gen AI capabilities, the buying process of insurance can be changed to a point where you may be able to get there because you're thoughtfully explaining to the individual what's unique to you. Okay, you live in an area where hail is very common, and that is driving your premium up by 30% because we expect to spend X amount to fix your roof every couple of years. If you can explain the risk to a person in a way in which they could make those changes, and each state was willing to allow that to happen, which is a big if, I definitely do think that is a possibility. Is it one I think that's in the near future? I think you're going to have to take one kind of very forward looking state to do that, and then the insurers are going to have a very close eye on the success or failure that someone takes by jumping in with both feet on that one.
That makes sense. One other topic I wanted to bring up, something that I assume you get involved, conversations happen around this. As we sit here today, a tropical storm just went up into Southern California. First tropical storm warnings in the state's history, I believe, is what I read.
Yeah.
And we had big flooding. We have wildfires throughout. We have an Atlantic basin that's busier than I've seen in a long time. I mean, we have climate change. We have a lot of climate change going on. What are the conversations look like around climate change and insurance?
I think all insurers every year are bracing more now for cat season than ever before. And I think they're taking that into account when they think about underwriting appetite, where they're putting their capacity and where they want to do business and what that means from, a combined ratio perspective. It goes back to that point we were talking about of, do you really want to be a coastal carrier? And if you're the large players that, are advertising the nationwides, the all states of the world, and you're out there, it's not a good look to say, I don't want to be in a certain state anymore. So I think they try and avoid that as much as possible. I know State Farm said they're not going to do any more business in California, new business. It's not a great brand perception issue. So I think instead most carriers are trying to figure out how to write that risk in a way in which is profitable. But I think they're then needing to lean into more of these tools that exist out there. So cat models, that are provided out there. How can you use your cat models to be more effective, both in your underwriting, but as well as your capital modeling, and ensuring that you've got the right reserves and investment structure to maximize your business. So
Yep.
it's changing a lot.
It is. And I mean, even with the cat modeling, with the tropical storm going up into Colorado or into California, it's something that's never happened.
Right.
And so they weren't even able to go back and say, well, the last time this happened, we got this.
Yeah.
It's always changing. It's always changing. But that's where we have to put our faith, a little bit of faith in the AI and say, as long as we put clean data in, it's better than us just guessing.
Without a doubt. Its ability to predict the unpredictable is a whole lot better than yours and mine.
Yeah. No, I agree. Are there any other topics out there that the insurance space is asking you about?
Oh,
those are biggies. Those are biggies.
Yeah. it's a big question. It keeps coming back to sales for me at the moment. Sales, like effective underwriting. We've been doing a lot of work for carriers at the moment about digging into their existing data to derive better insights and enable a better sales outcome for folks. And I think that ties really nicely into this Gen AI kind of conversation that we started with, which is, how do you take the data that we have about customers and the policies that they've purchased? And when you think about just, the amount of data that these large carriers have on you as the individual, it is just unbelievable. And you flip it around and say, well, how are you using that to better underwrite and create better kind of sales experiences? It's the short answer in most of these cases is it's not. And so we're helping carriers to really unlock those data sets and derive kind of better sales insights and let the seller focus on selling instead of trying to find the data point that they need to be able to enable a sale. And I think Gen AI just kind of superpowers that.
Is there a day when insurance companies are really pinpointing their advertising versus what Geico in the past has done is, just blast it everywhere you can. Everyone knows about the Geico ads. Is there a day when insurance is, really targeted at an individual?
Yeah, that is absolutely what is coming next. And I think dependent on the way that it is deployed is going to have a big impact on the way that people perceive the insurance industry. And when you think about in the mail, probably multiple times a week, I get a generic letter from insert XYZ carrier's name about their ability to give me a better homeowner's quote on the house that I own.
Right.
They're not personalized. You go and you're like, wow, that's a lot less than I pay now. And you go to their website and it requires you to fill in an hour-long form to be able to get a quote just to find out it's not better than what you write today. In the future, what I predict at least is basically those letters will come, or they'll come via emails, or they'll come via calls from what you think is a person on the other side with very detailed information, pre-quoted policies, maybe not 100% ready to bind without information from you, but close to it, that are highly specialized. And unlike you or I or someone who's out there selling insurance, they're not going to get tired of following up. And I think that's the scary part is they're not going to lose interest because they don't have, that sense of, all right, it's time to give up. And so I think the way that insurance carriers kind of deploy these really personalized sales tactics in the future are going to really impact the perception of the insurance industry, because I expect within the next year or two to start seeing some of that highly personalized sales outreach from the insurance carriers.
I'm just thinking about cross-selling. Once they become a insured of yours, you can use all the different data points to know if they have a race car or if they have a motorcycle. And then you just make sure, I mean, you can just keep going from there.
Yeah. Yeah. Cross selling is another big topic that we are hearing a lot from our carrier customers about, and how to do it more effectively. I mean, the value of a carrier or of a customer who, owns multiple products from you, and how long they're going to stick with you is just exponentially higher than that of, someone that shopped, found you, and is just deal shopping and will move on to the next product.
Yeah, I was thinking about my insurance. I have numerous products. I don't even know what they are until I go on and I look. I'm like, wow, I have all these products, and I feel, they're just sticky. They're
Yeah.
sticky. It's so easy to leave it that I don't want to go talk to somebody and say, well, I got this and this and this over here. Oh, but my life insurance is with the other company.
Yeah.
It's just easy.
Well, and it's easy to stay because it's painful to leave.
That's
And
exactly what it is.
yeah, and so I mean, I recently saw that my homeowner insurance went up like 15 or 20%, and being an insurance person, I immediately tried to dig in to figure out why, right? And I saw, okay, after enough digging through my carrier's website and looking to figure out, my inflation premium had gone in, and so they had upped what my dwelling coverage was by a significant amount, and all of a sudden the increased premium that I was paying made sense. But for the average individual, it's not so simple just to dig in and understand that. And
Yeah.
I think like another great Gen AI use case is explanation of benefits, whether it's explanation of benefits, explanation of your policy, like whether that's applied to your personal auto and property policies, or the medical bills that you get for your insurance in the mail. Its ability to explain things in layman's term to the individual are going to be just so much easier. And then, when you want to go shopping for insurance, it's no longer like this form of calculus where you're like, well, what do I own today? What does that premium or that limit actually mean, and this deductible? And how does that compare to a carrier that looks at it just slightly differently? Am I really comparing apples to apples? Like, all of these things I think are going to get a lot easier, which is at the total benefit to the customer. And I think it'll be to the benefit of the carriers that adopt it in the right way too.
Do you think that insurance companies need to be more visible for the insureds? I guess at one time I thought that insurance companies were moving towards, we want to be your best friend. We want you to think about us every day. But then I feel like it's kind of moved away, and that insurance is like, we want you to think about us when you need us, but not when it's time to renew or anything like that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think each insurer takes kind of a different perspective towards that. I think if you think about like the traditional kind of personal lines market, nationwide, we're on your side, and these kind of like things that are portrayed, these branding images into the market. Yes, they want you to be thinking about them, but is it reasonable for you to like interact with your agent every week? And do you want to do that? Probably not. And so what that means for them, in the personal line space, it's probably a bit more than it is in commercial line space. And they want to be present for you at the point of claim. But in between that, like personalized outreach, are they reaching out to you at big events in your life? Great. Does that mean a lot to the average customer? Maybe.
Right.
It depends, right? A card in the mail wishing me happy birthday from my personal lines carrier, does that stop me from wanting to move to another?
Yeah,
Yeah, probably not. I
probably
think
not.
I think in the commercial line space, though, and I know like Alacrity, you're in the space of managed repair and TPA and outsourced claims. I
Yeah.
think the question of how the TPAs and the adjusters kind of make themselves, aware to the customer of the carrier that they're servicing is important and potentially changing. And I think there are certain carriers that really want to lean into the world of, white labeling the managed repair service and the adjusting experience, and really kind of treating that whole claims process like gold and
Hmm.
leaning into it and creating the best possible customer experience. And then there are other carriers that look at that process of, it's time to indemnify this claim and move on to the next one. And, the managed repair process is somebody else, and they want to distance themselves from that. It really is a carrier kind of perspective on that makes it unique in each case.
Yeah. And I guess that's what makes it fun, right?
Yeah,
Every carrier decides we're going to do this. We think because of that, we'll keep more people and sell more policies.
that's right.
That's what makes the market go around. It's been going around for so long, and it seems to work.
Yeah, I think you're right about that.
Well, Michael, we're here at the end of our podcast. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. This is a good time.
Good deal. Well, I'm sure we'll see if we can get you back on in the future as trends change and new things come about. We look forward to talking to you again.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much for having me.
I'd like to say thank you to Michael for being on today. I really enjoyed getting to visit with him and think, what I think my favorite part there was talking about the sales cycle and how technology can help that. It can help pinpoint, it can help push to sell. I'm always fascinated at that and the marketing side of things. But we look forward to having Michael back on to talk about other trends that we see. I assume as we go to more conferences, as we have more panels, as climate change grows and claims happen, I look forward to having him back on to talk about those things. I'd like to say thank you to all the listeners who listened to us today and who have supported the podcast for the past 5 years. And special shout out to Rob Beller, who we don't have today, but who has really worked hard over the past 5+ years on this podcast. He's really breathed a lot of his life into it, put a lot of his time and effort into it. And I would say the majority of the guests, many of the guests at least, get found through Rob and Rob pushing for it. So, Rob, from all of us at F&O Insurtech, we want to say thank you for all that you've done for this podcast. And with that, we'll say goodbye. Goodbye, everybody.